Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, September 17th. It is 4 o'clock, and this is a regular board meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I am president of the board, and I am calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak, and if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So we'll do a roll call of commissioners to establish a quorum. My name is Jeff Randall, president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Dan Tupper, commissioner for District 3.
And I think Ken Collins is excused. Is that right? Okay, so we'll just be a board of 2 today, which does give us a quorum. So the next item is reviewing the agenda and approving it. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Staff present? Any need to change anything?
So I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I will second the motion. All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. The next item is public comment. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. And of course, we offer opportunities to comment on the specific items further down on the agenda. But if anybody wants to talk about something that's not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, please raise your hand or do something to get my attention. Bill.
This is a 2025 budget question. Is it already on the agenda?
We have budget update in the manager and staff report, but go ahead and say your piece, and then it gives staff a chance maybe to respond to it. And
so I was looking at the 2025 budget that's posted on the website, the draft 2025 budget, and it looked to me like the electric power utility part of the budget was going to run at a deficit, a loss for 2025. And that was going to be made up by projected income from broadband from customers that don't exist yet. I'm interpreting that. Now, question is, am I interpreting that correctly?
okay, thank you, Phil. And of course, budgets are always kind of plans and guesses, and we have a certain amount of cash in the bank. So when we run business lines at deficits, it's made up by our cash reserves, or we have to borrow, but we'll let staff address it.
And the part B to that is, well, if those income doesn't appear, is there a secondary, is there a plan B alternative?
Sure.
Some kind.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for your question. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing anybody online. There's nobody in the room. Oh, okay. Roger, is that you on the line? If so, please proceed.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I wanted to correct a statement that was made during the capacity discussion 2 weeks ago. One of the commissioners commented that our revenues were down with regard to electric because the discussion was on capacity charges. I wanted to point out that our July revenues year over year for electric, not our revenues, but our sales. The revenues aren't comparable because of rate increases, but our July electrical sales were up 4.2% over the July before. June's year over year, we were up 7.1%, and in May, our sales were up 3.6%. Also, there was another, I think something was said that I'd like to clear up. The commissioner pointed out that one of the reasons for having the capacity charge was that we could have a warm winter again. I hadn't heard that one in a while. I wanted to remind everybody that according to our financial policy, our rates are for recovery. They're not for a future possibility of a bad year. These are very specious arguments, and I'd rather hear rationales consistent with our financial policy rather than just dubious pretexts, especially from a commissioner who's supposed to be regulating that same policy that he's acting as a cheerleader for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Roger. And we don't have capacity charges on this evening's agenda, but it'll continue to be a subject of discussion until we take action on it, and as is the budget. So thank you for your comments and for weighing in. Anybody else? Not seeing any other hands, and no hands in here. So I will move us on to, oh, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, two rebuttals. One is revenue. We received reports from the finance director, and year to date, our revenues are down as to projected revenues. And as far as the weather is related, our year over year and our historical uses of energy are part of what goes into the budgeting process. And we look at the amount of energy we use during the winter months. Winter does affect our revenue. It's not a matter of rates, it's a matter of history and usage.
Okay, thanks for clarifying your comments, Dan. And I am going to stop just so we don't get back and forth going. That's not the intent of the public comment period, but we've heard you, Roger, and Dan got to express what he was meaning to say. Okay. Next item is manager and staff report. Do we have any manager or staff who would like to report?
Yeah,
Kevin, go
Jeff,
ahead.
Jeff, I thought there was,
Oh, wait a minute. I jumped over. You're right.
Yes,
Nobody,
okay, thanks.
nobody here was willing to interrupt me, but actually have a community solar presentation by the Mason Street neighborhood. So do we have a representative?
Yeah,
Here?
Bob Collins.
Hi, Bob. Please tell us about what you have in mind.
Sure. So I did provide some materials, and so I'm assuming that they're available online or to those on the call.
Yep. Can we put them up on the screen? Okay. Yeah, we have it's part of the packet. So
And
give
so
us
just as
just a sec. There we go.
Yeah, a little more of an introduction. My name's Bob Collins. I'm the Director of Construction, Land and Strategy. Lots of words there, but really what it means is we find the land. We then determine when to build and what the configuration is, and then
For habitat.
for habitat.
Okay.
And then, of course, we actually build those homes. And so a nice little virtuous cycle. If we could go to the next page, please. Mason Street is a really important project for, and let me know if that's going to be a problem. It's not a problem. I can just wing it. Mason Street, for those who don't know, is a 150 home neighborhood that we're building at the old airstrip at the corner of Mason and Cedar Avenue. It is an important part of what we think we can do to impact affordable housing in this area. Our intent is to have a walkable, friendly neighborhood. Part of that is to make sure that the homes are affordable across a diverse income range. So if we could go to the next slide. All the homes will be to habitat standards, and you're looking at a timeline here where you're in the process of designing the neighborhood. And so hence the question that's coming up right now, but we're in the design process and we'll be seeking to finalize design and start submitting permits for groundwork sometime next year. We hope to actually break ground for infrastructure January 1 of 2026 and have first homes occupied in 2027. We'll believe that this will be somewhere between a 3 and a 5 year phased neighborhood, probably closer to 5 than 3. Yeah, we're just really excited about this opportunity. As I mentioned, what's key is just cost of ownership. And so if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. The topic of solar keeps coming up. And so we've done some research, but really what we're looking for is to provide a means of reducing the cost of ownership in a sustainable way to our neighborhood residents. cost of ownership reduction can be direct or indirect. We've investigated rooftop solar, and so Habitat homes are very efficient. And so our concern about supporting rooftop solar on all those residences is that, not that we couldn't actually put them there in the first place, but at some point in the future, an affordable housing owner would then need to replace or maintain panels. And so instead of putting directly on each home, we are making the homes solar ready. And so each resident will have the opportunity to make the long-term commitment for themselves. And so homes will be solar ready throughout that neighborhood. One of the other things that though could be possible is that as we've designed the neighborhood, there are large areas of parking. And I do know that there are programs available for over parking solar. And so the simple ask, not, answer me now, but the simple ask is if there's an interest in the PUD investigating the opportunity of deploying solar over that parking, we would love to make that space available to lease so that the PUD could take that power. We feel that would be a nice, certainly would be a nice benefit for our residents. The electrical leasing offset makes their neighborhood more affordable from the standpoint of maintenance and common area. And ideally, if the PUD saw fit, that electricity would be valuable to this region. We would love that partnering. We currently work with Jimmy and Russ Miller and great cooperation and our planning efforts. And so very pleased there, but we just wanted to toss out this thought process to the PUD.
Okay, that's helpful. So I used to work in the solar industry, used to work for Power Trip Energy. So I had questions from this, and maybe I'll start, and Dan, if you have questions, you can jump into.
The next slide.
Oh, okay.
You'll see the site map. And so
Sure.
that might also help facilitate.
Sure. So the first question I had was, what do you mean by you're making the houses solar ready? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, and so there is to the best of my knowledge, there is a particular definition that says solar ready home, and that is what we're building to. So
like state building code or something like that? Okay.
And so basically it comes just short of deploying panels.
Okay. And have you or somebody else with Habitat consulted with either of the solar companies in town? Because I know they're really good at being up on the latest incentives, which I'm not anymore. Okay.
And so we have a great volunteer corps. And so myself, as well as that volunteer corps, has been investigating state, federal programs, as well as engaging with the local solar firms.
Okay.
Ultimately, what it comes down to, once again, is we can get those panels deployed. There are programs to do that. The concern is that we end up with another feature that the resident will have to maintain at some point in the future that they're not in a position to maintain from an affordable standpoint.
So you're saying that you possibly could get funding to put solar on the homes? Okay. And then when I talk to people about what you can do to make a home ready for solar or make it more difficult to put solar on, do you know where you're going to have the electrical panel on the house? And basically, as long as it's on an exterior wall, that's the first thing. Yeah.
And so we are in the process of finalizing our civil design.
Okay.
And that's why the timing of this question is here.
Okay.
We will be able to accommodate future plans, such as making solar ready homes, because that's within our
Right.
thought process. It would be great if we thought that there was a third party that wanted solar on top.
Sure. And I'll shift to that in a second. And then the last question is, are you going to have the meters on the house itself?
Yes.
Okay. And one example of a solar not ready project was Quimper Village. And the builder and the architect put all the electrical panels on interior walls, put the houses on a slab, and then put all the meters on a detached building separate, which made it impossible to do solar. So as
Yeah.
long as you don't do those things, you probably are, have houses you can put solar on in the
And so
future.
once again, we will definitely have solar ready homes. Part of what we want to do is drive community within our neighborhood, but we also understand that people want theirs.
Sure.
And so individual electrical and water metering is.
Right. Cool. So I guess shifting to the opportunity, what I'm hearing you say is that this property would be available if the PUD was interested in doing some sort of community solar or some other publicly owned solar project that could benefit other people, and then the lease payments, and then of course people in the development could also participate if they wanted to. But I don't know what the incentives and the laws are on that anymore, if we can put it on private land like this, or what we know. Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
I'm actually very interested in community solar and been looking at opportunities to do parking spaces. Oh, thanks, Will, sorry. There is funding through, Washington State to do that,
Yes, there is.
especially for us, if we were to put that in and sell credits for low income funding to cover that.
And so I'm familiar with that program. And so, part of the challenge we get is that our homes are very efficient. So once again, the return on the investment is very long if it's on a home. But over a parking structure, and the ability for the PUD to basically generate power, harvest power, and sell that power is something we don't have.
So do we
So
know?
I'm-
So do we know if the land ownership that it's going to be when it's all done, however you define that, is that going to be compatible with what the state says we can do?
Yeah, it doesn't matter who owns the land.
Okay.
As long as we're administering the program.
Okay, so it used to be it had to be on public land, so they've gotten rid of that.
Already with
Great.
this new program.
Great. Okay. So, what are next steps?
What would need to be true is that I would need the PUD to allocate resources to help make this possible. I
Mhm.
would really like to bring somebody into the circle so that we can update our civil engineering plans, as well as start projecting forward. Actually, we should reverse that. Start projecting forward what would be feasible for the PUD through the Washington State program, and then we would be updating our civil engineering.
And then are you planning structures over the parking lot right now, or would the structures be dependent on if solar is part of the plan, or what's?
What's really cool about this is that, well, presently, no, we are not planning structures. I'm also aware of funding for structures, or that's inclusive in that program that was mentioned.
Okay.
And so it becomes a big win for the neighborhood. And, basically it gives you the options of getting the angle of solar panel correct for the PUD.
Okay. And Dan?
Yeah, so again, I'm struggling a little bit with whether or not this is really going to be considered a community solar. Is it going to be done piecemeal all at once? It seems more like a development or a developer-oriented type of a project rather than a PUD funded type of a project. So again, I'm starting to be curious about listening to what staff has to say. And obviously this is the general manager's prerogative here to dedicate resources, i.e. people, to looking at this. And, I would be interested to hear a staff recommendation at some point on the viability, because the last thing that I want to do is see us subsidizing this through other ratepayers who don't have the ability for us to put a community solar type of a project in their neighborhood. Now we're starting to pick, who gets benefits and who doesn't, where everybody should be kind of at the same level of being able to get this type of thing come in their direction. So I know that can't always be the case, but that's some of the things that hit me right out the gate on this. I'm supportive of things we can do to help with affordable housing and low income. But those are a couple of things for me. Again, I always struggle with if we can buy power less expensively than we can generate it here, I want to lean towards buying the power rather than generating. And I know that goes against a lot of people wanting to keep things in the community, or, environmentally wanting to, looking at conservation. And this is a way for us to produce here in the county. Again, it still comes down to dollars too at the end of the day. And with the budgets, the way they're headed, and the other requirements that we're coming up against with CETA and other things, that maybe this does make sense. I don't know. I really think we need to have staff take a deep look at it if the general manager has the resources to do that.
I'd like to address that. It's not in Habitat's interest to pass a bill over to the PUD. And so anything that was done on this, in this neighborhood, would have to be for the benefit of the PUD at an economic rate for the PUD. The power would be available to the PUD, not to the neighborhood. We're just simply making that property available and then benefiting in a small way relative to any leasing of space.
Sure. So Kevin, are you able to answer some questions of how this fits into the overall PUD plans or serving our customers?
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit. I am familiar with a lot of the solar on parking. We did it at Navapache, you know, in the schools, district, stuff like that.
That's in New Mexico, right?
Arizona.
Arizona.
And it, maintenance is expensive. I understand why the community doesn't want to do it, because that is part of the issue with that type of solar, and everything depends on what's made. We can spend a little time researching it, looking at our opportunities, but I am a little hesitant. The available space to the cost of the solar, to the amount of power we get back, we can look at those and bring something back to the board, you know, some ballpark figures. So I will put some resources to it, but I am hesitant to really jump in with both feet until we do a lot more research, because
Sure. I think some of the questions the board would have would be, how much square footage are we looking at converted to? How many kilowatts of solar would it be? What funding sources are potentially out there to help with the costs, if any, if there's any funding sources to help reduce the upfront costs? And then who would be the intended beneficiaries? And Gene mentioned low income. So it's like, how could this be of benefit to local, the local PUD customers? And then I think also things like business plan are a little harder to detail until you get further into the project details. But I think that eventually would follow once it kind of passed the initial test of, okay, this is interesting. This might do something good, so let's go further. But does that answer kind of your initial questions, Dan?
Yeah, like I said, the last thing I want to do is get us tied into something that we're responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep of, because at the end of the day, then the amount of, what that energy is really worth to us matters. So ultimately, who's responsible for owning and maintaining it over the long term? I realize there can be a short-term gain, but it's the long term more that concerns me. And if you have people moving in and out of those units and things like that, I don't know how you track and how you are able to get the return on investment to make sure that the thing is sustainable.
So, but you don't have any problem with staff doing some initial, okay.
Oh, no,
So
exactly.
I think initially, amongst everything else you're looking at, how much power could it make? Are there funding options out there to help? Who would it benefit? I think those are, and then as Dan's pointing up, if it passes the initial test, then we'd want to get down into the weeds of, okay, who would own it? Who would maintain it? Things like that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And it's Bob, right? Okay. Thank you, Bob, for coming. Thank you for your work with Habitat to do this really incredibly ambitious project that is so needed.
It's a privilege to work for Habitat. And like I said, we have great partnerships throughout the county, including the PUD.
Yeah. And I would think if we were interested in doing it, of course, the deal you want to have happen is you don't want to be having to tear stuff up to put in something like this later. That's the problem.
Figure out how to work around a level of effort that we see taking place.
Yeah.
And if early on the decision is it's not feasible, great.
Yeah.
I'm simply happy to be able to put the opportunity out there.
Cool. Well, there has been interest in the community, especially with low income people. And one of the things that Dan brought up is, how do we provide something for people who can't afford to do it on their homes. And this was one of the state's ways to try and make that possible. So anyway, lots more to learn to see if it's a real opportunity. But I appreciate what Habitat is doing, and I encourage us to collaborate where we can, where it makes sense. All right.
Jeff, one more quick clarification. So is Habitat kind of envisioning that the PUD would do a power purchase agreement going into this? Is that we're just looking at buying the power? Is that what their intent is? Or are they really thinking more that we are going to be?
So it sounds like Habitat is basically making the land available to a third party to develop solar. And it sounds like the community solar laws allow an entity like the PUD to be a developer. And then community solar gets really complicated, but it's like the true owners are kind of the investors who buy the shares, who then get the power benefits. And it probably requires, then you get into, are you going to do virtual net metering, where you take something off their bill? It gets into a lot of questions, but I think first you have to you don't have to get into those details right away. If you just go, does this make sense on a much higher level before, because it can get killed by details later, but unless you decide it makes sense with the first big questions, why bother digging into the details? So, yeah, if you don't fully understand it, that's okay, because I don't fully understand it. These are all very detailed and complicated, and community solar projects have changed over the years, and so we'll see. And then there used to not be funding, and now there's more funding there than there used to be. So who knows? Okay, thank you again for coming, and please keep going. And then we'll try and do our best on the sewer plant. I'm assuming this is all dependent on the sewer plant too. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Okay, now that I have been corrected on what is actually happening. So are we now to manager and staff reports? All right, who's leading us?
Okay, and I don't have my agenda up. Do we hit the consent agenda first?
No, consent agenda is after commissioner reports. So we do
Okay.
manager and staff, and under manager and staff, we have 2025 budget update.
And I'm remote. I'm usually there, so I apologize.
Don't worry.
On manager's report, we're going to start with an additional budget update that Mike Bailey is going to give, and then we'll jump into some other things.
Okay, Mike, once you're ready.
All right, let me just get this pulled up here. So this last 2 weeks ago we did a budget update in regards to the expense budgets, the revenues. This time we're going to talk a little bit about the capital budget update as we get ready for the budget hearing on October the 7th. So just looking, we got on our electric capital work, we got $12.7 million, $9.4 million in substation work, $125,000 in distribution transformer work, $300,000 for SCADA work, which is our automation to work the system, to control the system. Warehouse and yard improvements here at 310 is $550,000. Line extension services subdivisions are $725,000. Some overhead to underground conversions is $975,000. The pole replacements $100,000. Replace conductors, the wires out there is $200,000. Then just some miscellaneous items is another $300,000 to make up that $12.7 million.
And this is proposed for next year.
This is proposed for next year. This is based off of our draft 4-year work plan for the electric that ICPE, Kevin's been working with ICPE on. It has been brought to the board for approval. They're still working on some finer details of it, but once it is, it will all be part of the 4-year work plan.
Okay. But this is year one.
This is,
4-year
yeah, that was year one.
Okay.
And we've talked about this. So going on, water capital based on our 10-year work plan is $969,000. We did just get some funding for work done on the coil. This hasn't been added in yet. We still got to work on some stuff like that. So this one's going to change a little bit here. But we got some Bywater Bay water main looping that we need to do to just to get the system run a little bit better out there for 183,000. The coil, we were gonna do some pipe replacement for 146. That project's gonna become quite a bit more. Climper, our main water system, got some pipe replacement that needs to happen for 383,000. Other pipe replacements throughout our systems for 175. Our wastewater work, sewer, that's the grinder pumps, things like that. We got about 13,000, and other work we have about 67,000 on the water capital. And that's all based on our 10-year work plan that was done during COVID. We haven't taken the time to, update it and stuff. There's probably some other changes. But like I said, we did get some funding for the coil wheel, right? How much do you remember?
7 million.
$2.67 million. Some of that's grant loans, so that's in addition came in after this was all done. So that water capital is going to probably go up a little bit. But and the one thing as I go through the broadband one here, a lot of these capital projects are going to be based on funding and what funding sources are out there and whether we have the money to do them. So even though we put them out in the budget to have them done, depending on how everything works out, they may or may not be done. They may have to get pushed around. But here's our broadband capital. It's $15 million. A lot of this is grant funding. Our HUDs or buildings, 163,000. Fiber is 9.6 million. We got 1.7 million basically for engineering. We got some ponds that for 200,000. The drops going to the houses about 1.5 million. ONT is the stuff inside the house to make it work is 770,000. Consulting is 125,000, and then some other work just to get everything up and running is $1 million. Commissioner Tupper?
Yeah, maybe this is for Will more than you. I don't know. On the drops, is that to get it fiber to the home, or is that just to drop it down or bring it up to a property line? What exactly are the drops? What does that 1.5 million give us? Is that is there a number of customers you can apply to that number, or a little more discussion about the drops?
Yeah, that's the fiber to the home. There's not a set cost for each drop, but that's the cumulative.
Any idea on how many homes or services that is?
We are looking to connect around 1,000 customers next year. It probably will have some spillover from this year, so it'll be around 1,200 to, if we're really successful, 1,500, but I don't think so. Probably 1,200 is a safe estimate.
Thank you. And I'm just kind of doing the math on what that figures out to per drop. I realize it's going to vary, but that's an average.
And will the broadband capital, how much of that, is it possible to tell us how much of that is grants versus loans versus our money?
Yeah, for that should be next year's projects, which would be Jefferson North, which is 9 million in grants, 750 match from the county, and I think almost $1 million match from the PUD. It's $1.1 million grant from the Public Works Board, and then a $2 million loan from the Public Works Board as well.
Okay, so 2 million loan and 1 million of ours.
Yep.
And the rest is.
And we'll have
One other quick question, if I could, on the engineering. Is that for us to stay on pace for what we have planned? Or is that escalating or cutting back? Is there the engineering number, how firm is that?
This is the engineering for those projects that we have scheduled for next year. It is not a firm number. I would have to go back and review the numbers. I think we carried forward some of these estimates.
Yeah, some of these numbers have been carried forward based on where and how we are, because it's with the projects, the timing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably is that will have to be a flexible number.
And
Yeah.
Kevin, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that some of the timing we're still working out. We've talked to the board last couple of meetings, on how we're gonna account for cash flows and things like that with upcoming projects. So where I do think these are good dollars, the start and stop of these projects is still in flux right now until we get a little bit closer, on some other items, and then we'll come back to the board with some recommendations.
Okay, and I realize it is kind of a challenge to take multiple because the way that we go after funding and we put the funding together, it's based on a project, and the project doesn't necessarily cleanly fall into a budget year. So you got a budget year and you might be clipping projects from the previous year and the next year. And anyway,
Yeah.
okay. We'll try to let you keep going,
Right.
not overwhelm you with questions because it is confusing.
Well, those are the three main capital items.
Okay,
We're gonna get into some other little minor things that are capital budgets. You know, of course, one of the big ones is fleet. You do have to have vehicles for people to get around in. We actually had this today where went to go look for a vehicle. There are no vehicles because Kevin's traveling, another vehicle's in the shop, so somebody else is using one of the vehicles. So trying to find, you know, all of a sudden you have no vehicles for people to drive. So, you know, that's one of the things. So we got 285,000, you know, that we're looking at. IT, you know, with some of the work that we've talked to the board on to get them to help be able to run between all the different places, all the different offices, get them a vehicle, probably an electric vehicle. Electric, we're looking for a couple of trucks for them, averaging about 60,000. Water, a new truck, 60,000. Broadband, a new truck at 60,000. As far as whether they're hybrids, electric vehicles, gas vehicles, it's all kind of depend on what the need is and what is available at the time, and where, you know, how they fit into our needs. So.
Okay.
Then some other capital items. We got 382,500. Gonna do some installation of vehicle charger for about 75,000. We did get it's a grant, Will, for the vehicle chargers to install those. It's a grant, isn't it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so that's, you know, that's why we're gonna do, I think 6 of them, 8 of them.
We have a grant for 6 of them.
6 of them.
Yep.
We've talked about 2 different numbers. I can't remember which one's which. So that's why, you know, here at 310 at Auto Street to be able to do those. Some additional yard improvements that may or may not happen for 67.5. We need a new NISC server, which is our main server, that system that we use for everything. Gonna cost about 35,000. The tools, about 100,000 for utilities, and these are for over 5,000 in a year, useful life for more than 1 year. And then just contracted engineering, ICPE, Finley, things like that we do outside of our normal. Just need additional help that Jimmy's group kind of needs help with on some bigger projects and stuff.
okay.
So this is just looking at what we have total for our capital debt principal costs for next year. So when you add in $4.8 million in principal payments, because the interest is already covered in the expense side of things, we're looking at over $34 million in capital debt principal payments for next year.
And the long-term debt principal payments, is that primarily the RUS payment?
Primarily the RUS is the biggest one on that one.
Yeah.
Everything else is smaller payments and stuff, but to take over the initial
Okay.
one is the big one. And then just reminder of the timeline, we did have the draft budget that was posted to the website on Friday, August 30th. Our budget hearing is scheduled for Monday, October 7th. We'll have additional meetings as needed in October and November to talk about the budget, and the budget needs to be approved by November 30th.
Okay.
And that is the capital budget update.
Dan.
So Mike, while I've got you, I'm gonna go to revenues. And just so I'm understanding the data and the information I'm seeing, maybe before tonight's over, you can give me a rundown on what our net revenue compared to budget is for the year?
Projected.
Well, some of it is not projected, some of it's revenue that's been realized.
Right.
Okay. I can try
Yeah, like I said, if you can.
some of that because it's going to be hard. I can tell you what I projected for budget revenues, but what the actuals are going to be, it's going to be hard to know where we're at on. But I will try to work on that, Dan, and get something towards the end of the meeting if possible.
So,
you.
Mike, you put out the preliminary budget prior to last meeting. And I'm looking at it right now. Are you gonna update that before the October meeting, or is this the same budget we're gonna see at the October hearing?
There might be a few changes. I know Kevin's traveling this week. He's traveling part of next week, so it might be right before the budget hearing, the week before. We'll get it at least to the commissioners and get it as part of the agenda item. Because we have to find time that we can sit down and discuss some of these things to make
Mhm.
sure that we both are all in line of it. So, but yes, what the last one I gave you was the one that was posted to the website. And I'll address Phil's question. The electric one actually is not losing money. The broadband side is actually going to be losing money. The electric side actually just had that here on the one that's on the website. Their net margins for the year are 6.4 million. The net operating margins are 4.5 million. The broadband loses $1.1 million in net margins, but with the revenue coming in from the grants, they're actually making, I showed that they're making about $10.5 million.
And the page I'm looking at, it's it's not in this week's packet, it's from the last packet, but it's got electric utility is shown as net cash flow minus 4.3
Yeah,
million.
that's different than margins. That's the additional cash flowing that has to be. That is, so with everything with if we do the $12 million in projects and everything, we would have to take $4.3 million out of reserves to pay for everything. So that is including.
And that includes depreciation and amortization. And I know,
That's adding that back.
and I
in 'cause
know
they're not-
why they put that in there, because they're reminding us that things are wearing out. And if you're not reinvesting that money to replace equipment, eventually that bill will come due and you
Yeah.
won't have the money.
Yeah, so the net cash inflow at the bottom of them shows how much of our reserves, what the effect is on reserves. So it would be that electric we'd have to take $4.3 million out of reserves to pay for everything that's in the budget, where the other two would be adding money into reserves.
Yeah, and I see where you're pointing at on that same page. The net operating margins is showing 4.5 million positive for
Yeah,
for electric, minus 1 million on the broadband, and positive 143,000. So anyway, this is just an update. It's
yeah,
not,
just an update, just
not the actual thing, but it's a good time for questions. So Dan, you got another one?
No, I'm just gonna reiterate and make sure I was clear there that that's this year's revenues year to date where we were, not necessarily projected for next year's budgets. I was curious of where we are with this year in revenues, as close to year to date today as we can.
So that's a different question. And Mike, somewhere you said you just closed the books on August.
Yeah, I just sent that out last week to the commissioners. Let me see if I can find it real fast.
Yeah, I'd just like to have you state what that is so that I'm understanding that the information I'm getting is the same thing that I'm putting back out there.
So right now our actuals to budgets through August for the whole, as a combined utility, we were $3.2 million on the year below the budgeted amount.
Okay.
Revenues are behind how many million?
$3.2 million.
And on the electric, yeah, that was combined. What about just on the electric?
For the year, it's $3 million that were under budget. Actuals are under budget, and 180,000 for the water budget.
There were 3 million behind budgeted revenues for the electric.
Yes,
Correct? That's what I've been reading.
that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, continue with manager and staff report. Are you done with the budget?
I'm done with the budget.
Dan, do you have anything on budget for the next meeting? Okay, I don't either. Don't expect the budget to be approved at that meeting. I'll just say that. I think this will be one of the more challenging budgets we've had since I've been on the board anyway. So, okay. Who's next on managers and staff? think you're muted, Kevin.
Your microphone's not working, Kevin. Still not.
Get out the hammer.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Ron. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So Jean is next and she has two items she's gonna discuss. The Schedule 24 and some issues we're having there. And the amount of dollars that we've been able to give back to the community. So Jean, are you ready to jump in?
I'll start with the good news. Clean energy credits, we gave away $646,400. 3,232 families received that credit.
That's great.
Portals closed, we're all done. The bad news. The Schedule 24s that Kevin mentioned. When we were getting ready for the clean energy credits, we discovered that 300 plus residential accounts were in a commercial revenue class.
And that what I read on that was that when builders or people started building a home, sometimes it would get classified as something different. And then when the home turned to occupancy, it was supposed to change over to a residential
For that case.
account.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
All sorts of cases.
all sorts of cases. So, the one that you read, the letter that the commissioners got, they will be getting an adjustment going back as far as you'll approve.
Mhm.
That they should never have been a commercial service. The bulk, however, will not be getting adjustments. Well, I won't say that. It's being discussed, but when we did away with the Schedule 8 general service, that was the residential general service. Folks were either put on a Schedule 7 residential rate or a 24 commercial rate.
Okay.
All the shops were put on a commercial rate,
Just because.
and it was not right.
Yeah. So they were a shop that was accessory to a residence in a lot
Yes.
of cases and
Yes.
should have been just a residential account.
Yes.
Okay.
So we fixed those going forward.
Okay.
I believe there will be 2, maybe 4 accounts that need those adjustments.
Okay. All right. That doesn't sound like the sky is falling.
No, but it's still not good.
it's annoying.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I've been cleaning things up for many years.
We got enough challenges ahead of us. We don't need the stuff bubbling up behind us. That's like, why? Okay.
And then on top of that too, we had bad data from PSE for
Yeah.
some of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with 20 some thousand accounts, it's expected to get some goofiness at times. Okay. Anything more from manager and staff, or is that it?
I'm gonna do a calendar update. Just so everyone's aware of a couple meetings. We're gonna have an ICG meeting on Thursday evening. We have a special meeting on Friday for the board where we're gonna have Finley, our fiber engineers, on site. And then we're gonna also go into an executive session. And then on Saturday, we have the Quilcene Fair and ribbon cutting ceremony for the fiber project. So it's a busy week, a lot of meetings. I hope, and I'm extending the invitation to everyone here to participate in the ribbon cutting ceremony in Quilcene. It should be a lot of fun. There'll be some people there and hope to see everyone there. So with that, that's the end of manager's report.
And Kevin, I had asked you for a couple of items, updates on them. The one was we did that land clearing around the Port Ludlow substation a year or two ago. And I was asking when the replanting is going to be happening on that.
So the replanting, I talked to Scott Bancroft today. We'll replant first of the year, maybe January, February sometime.
Okay.
He will start working on the process we do a bid process and to replant the trees. That will start here shortly, but the real time frame is probably into January-ish.
Okay, as long as we get it in, in the middle of the year, not waiting until after March, because then stuff just dies. So got to get it in between now and then. Okay. And then the other question I had was the undergrounding project along Sims Way adjacent to Boat Haven. Do you have any update on the port and the PUD, where we are on that project?
Yes, we are doing some boring samples to do foundation design on the two steel structures. We're gonna have two steel structures on both ends. The geotech company was in and did the boring on last Friday. As you're aware, Jeff, we've turned over the SEPA permitting to the port. It's their project. And we are waiting for their SEPA and their permitting to come through before we start taking down trees or doing any conduit work.
So is that likely then a 2025 project?
Definitely a 2025 project. We may do a little work January sometime, but I think even that would be a little bit quick. The thing we do need to do is finalize our designs so that we can put some material bids out there as soon as that SEPA and the permitting has been approved. Because once we have that go, then we'll have less than a year to use our funding from the PIF fund. It has to be used by the end of 2020.
Oh, okay. End of 2025?
2025, I can't remember if it was October. I think they changed it to December, but I'm not sure of the exact date. But we will push forward fairly quickly once that permitting is complete.
Okay. Dan, do you have a question?
Since Kevin brought it up, and that's the ICG, I had it in my commission report, but I won't be available for the ICG meeting on what Ken's schedule is. So again, you might run into a quorum issue on Thursday night.
Okay, I will be there. Has staff checked with Ken to see if he's at that meeting?
I did not, Jeff, but I will call and see if Ken is available.
Okay.
And then two quick questions. We have a quick update or information about the LUD 17 process, where we're at with that. And then the other one would be the Hadlock Sewer interlocal. Any information or anything new on those fronts?
I can give you a quick update on the interlocal. Joel is finishing up with the county attorney. The county attorney's actually gone right now for, I think, 2 weeks. We're very, very close on the agreement. Then it will come back to the board for approval. The reason staff would like to get that done ASAP is the new hire. We need to hire that sewer plant operator, and it's going to be a challenge. So we're hoping to get that done sooner than later. And then what was your other question, Dan? I already forgot it. Didn't write it down.
The Ludlow LUD 17.
Mike can give you a quick update. I do know the letters either went out today or going to go out this week that finalizes that process.
They're going to go out by Friday this week. We had to wait for the 10-day period, appeal process period to end. So we're working on that. Joel's helping myself and Cara Rogers finalize those. I think we got those all together now. And so just getting everything finalized, and they will go out by Friday this week with that. Now we'll give them 30 days to prepay, and then we'll start billing them annually in 2025.
Great. And Kevin, I don't know what to say about the county and the interlocal on the sewer, but the obvious thing is, yeah, we'd love to have an agreement with you to operate it, but we can't operate it unless we have a person to operate it. So, would you please get your ducks in a row? Our ability to catch the project will depend on having someone to run it. So, okay. Did we have anything else on manager or staff? I didn't have any more. Dan, did you have anything else? Nope. Okay, then I guess we're moving on. Get back to, I think we're, oh, this is commissioner report. Dan, would you be willing to go?
Yep, I can go ahead and go. So I attended the PPC Members Forum on September 4th. Southwest Power Pool's Vice President of Markets, Antoine Lucas, and Carrie Simpson, their Director for SPP Western Services, gave detailed, updates, clarifying information about the Markets Plus day-ahead market process development. They talked about the FERC tariff application process, funding for further advancements of the market development, and the culture that SPP operates under while developing this market. They want transparency. They want equitable governance. Those are the two main priorities for them on the culture that they're approaching this from. It was an excellent presentation on why many of the entities supporting the development of Markets Plus is good, because they believe in the competition that CAISO has going on with their early day ahead market, that this market will help make sure that the markets are going to be equitable, fair, and affordable for the customers of the region. BPA representatives spoke to PPC after the SPP presentation and reiterated the rationale and methodology that BPA is using to support the Markets Plus, Southwest Power Pool's Markets Plus development process. I attended the PPC Executive Committee meeting on September 5th. BPA General Counsel Marcus Chong Tim gave a history on the evolution of BPA, the Northwest Power Act, preference and priority power rates, and the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, on how those things came into existence and how they interact today. He and Kim Thompson also talked about the provider of choice contract timelines leading up to the draft record of decision by the administrator, which is due in late summer of 2025. So that's approaching in a real big hurry. And the signing of those contracts will happen in a little over a year, in December of next year. So we'll be looking at what our next 20 years of power contract with BPA is going to be like here within a year. I attended the Jefferson County Fire Chiefs meeting on September 9th. I attended the PUD employee picnic. Thanks to everyone who organized and attended that event. It was really great to get out and talk with everyone and see some of the families and see everybody having a good time. I attended the NOAANET meeting on September 11th. NOAANET has 89 days of liquidity, which ties an all-time high for them. The member loan account is receiving about 5.4% interest and is on pace for an early payback. There will be we've already been paid out on that one. Incidentally, that was when we gave $50,000 to, and they paid us back right out the gate because it was a fairly small amount compared to what everybody else was getting or had put in. There will be an audit report in November by Moss Adams. They already know that there will be no findings reported. It's just that we won't hear the report. The board won't get the report until November. There'll be an executive board workshop in the near future. Kind of a strategic planning for NOAANET, I guess is a way to put it, for their future business model options. If we have any input regarding NOAANET's business model, we should get those to Craig Nelson. And again, that's just one component. There's other things that have been brought up that may come out in this particular meeting, things like revenue sharing or dividend paybacks to member owners, new member additions to the board and to NOAANET, new ownership, member requirements for certain levels of service that will be required to be a part of and part owners of NOAANET. Things like that are going to be up for discussion. So again, more on that as we have the next meeting. I think the next meeting's in Olympia. I didn't write down, but I'm pretty sure the next meeting is going to be at Waputa in Olympia next month. Yeah, I did write it down. NOAANET in October. I spoke with, on September 13th, I spoke with the customer that was impacted by the Schedule 24, and Gene already discussed that, so I won't go into any more detail about that, other than I did contact the customer, and the customer seemed to be good with the way things were going, where we're headed, and threw a big shout out there to Gene in particular and her team for the work that they're doing. So there was that feedback as well. I met with General Manager Street and we'll probably hear from that. I believe that particular customer is going to be at one of our future meetings, looking for some more discussion about how we can make them whole on that one particular instance. I met with General Manager Street on September 13th as well. I'll be at Waputa all of this week in Wenatchee. I already said I wouldn't be available for the ICG. I'm going to attend our special meeting on Zoom on September 20th. I will attend the Quilcene Fair. I'll be home Saturday for the fair and the PUD fiber celebration on the 21st. I meet with General Manager Street on September 23rd. I'm going to attend a Waputa Executive Board meeting at Kitsap PUD on September 24th as part of my duties as the Executive Board Secretary for Waputa. I will attend the Waputa Water Workshop on September 25th, 26th, and 27th in Spokane. And I will attend PPC in Portland on October 2nd and October 3rd. And that completes my report.
Okay, I was just trying to look up that next. Yeah, I don't have it. When is that NOAANET meeting in October?
It's the second Tuesday. I think I had the 13th written down. If I'm
So
not mistaken.
Is it Wednesday or Tuesday?
It's actually a Wednesday. Sorry. Yeah, it's
That would be
Wednesday.
9th.
Maybe it is the 9th. I'm gonna look at my calendar. Yeah, I have the 9th. Sorry about that date.
Okay, thank you. I'm just
On
gonna
my
get
calendar, it's the 9th. I'm in the right month there. No, yep, that's right. October. Too many calendars, too many dates.
right. I'm gonna try and get to that one since it's close. Okay, and then those start at 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let me get to my report, which won't take too long. So I had a call with Kevin Street on September 4th, and I listened into part of the PPC member forum and then the next day the executive session. And I also found that presentation by the general counsel of BPA to be really interesting. That was very educational. Attended the PUD picnic and got to meet a number of employees with the PUD, some of whom were really new hires, and a lot of them were in the broadband division. So that was really nice to get to meet people and see the team that we have there. And I encourage the manager and staff to organize, more events like that, one or two a year or whatever. I think it's just nice to have people have a chance to interact outside of the work environment, even though I asked a lot of work questions of folks because I was kind of curious as to what they did and so forth. But I think those are really useful team building exercises. And I think it's just good for us as an organization. On the 11th, I listened into the NOAANET meeting, and afterwards I called Craig Nelson because there was an issue that had come up about a past invoice with the PUD, and he made it pretty clear what it was about. He didn't think it was a huge big deal. And then I followed up with Kevin Street about that. So it sounds like staff and NOAANET are getting the details on what those invoices are and what's owed. So I won't mention any more of that. But Dan also talked to Craig a little bit about that next meeting, the one that you mentioned. And it really sounded like this discussion of what does it mean to be a NOAANET, board member? What does it mean to be a owner of NOAANET? And I don't know if we're going to have time to really talk about our role there before that meeting, if that is the October meeting. But it sounds like I think we're going to be called on the carpet a little bit. And it just feels like we might want to talk as a board about our involvement, because it really feels like they're going to define some relationships between the members and NOAANET and what's expected. And they might say to us, we're kind of welcoming you to leave because you're not really using the benefits of knowing it. But I don't know, any thoughts, Dan or Kevin?
Well, first, I don't know that the next meeting that's when that discussion will take place. That wasn't the impression I had.
It's
I'm
later.
not saying that it couldn't.
Okay. Kevin's
then-
not with us. So I just wanted to say, I think we should have an agenda item on one of our meetings where we can talk about that a little bit before that meeting happens. Otherwise, I think we might feel unprepared.
Yeah, I've talked with Kevin as well, and Kevin was obviously in the room at that meeting as well, you know, in Spokane where I was at. So, again, yeah, points well taken by you. I don't know that I want to classify it as being called to the carpet. I think there's some clarification, and not just for us. I think all the current members, the nine current owners, I think these are discussions that they're all going to have to kind of have, because I'm not exactly sure how the membership's going to approach some of these issues. So again, unless we want to listen to some of their meetings and their discussions, or just, you know, in a roundabout way, talk with the other board members, or, you know, other commissioners or whomever it may be that's associating for those utilities with NOAANET, I don't know how I would want to classify the real direction that meeting would take.
Okay. Joel, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just had one thought that we should all, and it's more of a mental reminder to myself, but you know, it's depending where things go and how they develop. I mean, if they ask us to leave, then we ought to at least get our guarantee canceled, because there's absolutely no benefit to our membership then. And if they're asking us to do that, then we ought to get that. You know, I mean, they're the ones making the definition about what membership means.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's kind of going around in circles a little bit, but from, I think, staff's perspective, they're trying to put together business models. Hey, what is it, how does NOAANET survive? What do we do? What services do we sell? And they're looking at the members as, critical customers too. So they're trying to figure out, okay, these board members are customers of ours also. Should there be an expectation of how much business, an owner is doing with the association? So I don't know how it's going to go either, but that's just kind of an issue that Craig was bringing up with me, and I'm sure he's brought it up with you guys too.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit far out over the skis. And to Joel's point, I think regardless of how things play out, that is already known. I think on by the members and by the owners and by NOAANET, that's something that would have to be addressed, and I'm sure that it would be addressed, as a buyout or whatever however you want to look at it, or relinquishment of a contractual agreement, or whatever it may look like. That's something that the membership would make a decision. I think it's a little early to try and figure out just what exactly it would look like, or how that discussion or those types of things would go. So again, that was my point, was as a board, and I've talked to Kevin, and Jeff has obviously, talked to Craig and to Kevin. So I think, we can have a meeting here at some point to get it on the agenda to talk about it, but I don't think it's as urgent as the next meeting. So
I don't think it's urgent as the next. I don't think we can, since it's a budget meeting anyway. But I think, Kevin, if you could just look at when that NOAANET meeting is going to happen, and if we could schedule an item on one of our meetings before that time. And I think the topics that we need to talk about are, what is Jefferson PUD's relationship to NOAANET? How are we using NOAANET? What's the relationship? What do we think is going to come up at this NOAANET board meeting? What are some of the possibilities? And then, kind of to Joel's point, what are our interests at being at the table as a full owner? And then they've got this affiliate or associate, a step down level of ownership or involvement. I can't remember what that's called. But if we were to go from what we are now to that lower level, what kinds of concessions or releases or whatever we'd want? I just would hate for us to be involved in a meeting and feel blindsided. I just hope we're prepared, so we can discuss.
Well, one last thought, since we're on this discussion, and, as for me, is I look back 3-4 years ago, where the industry was, where NOAANET was, where we and other utilities were, and where we are now. what's it gonna look like in 3, 4, 5 years? I would hate to see us make decisions, too brashly or whatever, without really looking at what the future is going to look like for NOAANET, for us, for other PUDs or other entities who may be interested in being a part of NOAANET. I think it's a little early to, get our feet too stuck in any concrete here.
Well, and again, I think we should probably hold most of our thoughts for when we have more information, at this future meeting. But I kind of tend to agree with what you're saying. We're clearly going into broadband with the intent of being a retail provider. And not that long ago, there were guffaws at NOAANET that we were going to do that. And now listen to what's being talked about at NOAANET. They're all talking about retail. So it's like, you're right. Things are changing rapidly. And I kind of would hate for us to lose potential resources when we fully don't know the extent of the opportunities and problems we're going to be dealing with as a broadband provider. So anyway, or you could say, hate to burn my bridges, before I need to know I might have to go back over those bridges. But yeah, I think we should have more discussion on this. Okay, I was in the middle of my report. So I had a call with Don McDaniel on the 16th. And then looking ahead, you guys are in your Dan, you're in Wenatchee. I'm hoping some of those meetings are Zoomed. I was planning to tune into some of those. And then does Waputa have a water workshop the following week, like the 25th through the 27th? I don't know if those are Zoomed or not. I'm not going to be. I think that's in Spokane. I'm not going to be there.
They should be Zoom, Jeff.
Yeah, I was planning to Zoom into some of those. And then same with PPC in the first week of October. So that is my report. And back to the agenda. Get it back up here.
So we're on consent.
Consent. Okay.
So I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. And I don't have anything to take off it. Kevin, you're cool with it? Okay. I will second the motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Old business. Now, wait a minute. Okay. I'm on the wrong agenda.
Did we get, I think that's where we are. We're on.
No, I think you're right. I was, the one I was looking at was last week and it had capacity charges on there and I was
Well,
just
I printed one off, but it may have been updated, so don't take me.
No, you're good. We just did consent. That was right. Old business. We don't have anything under old business. And the next item is new business, sole source, resolutions, broadband, and meters. Who's leading us on this one?
So I'll start and then Will can jump in. So one of the recommendations that we've been working with Moss Adams on the new procurement manual and some of these kind of things is when we have some of the vendors, such as the meter contract that we went with Vision Meters to, procure all the meters from them based on their bid. We're at the point now where we're continuing to buy their meters, but they recommend not only for meters, but some of the Calix equipment and that kind of stuff. The board approved those purchases a couple of years ago. Moss Adams is recommending that these sole sources be done every 2 years, that we, bring them to the board. And that way, if we're ever audited, we have a trail that not only did we purchase the meters based on the bid, but now we're sole sourcing because it's how they come back through the same thing to get into the NISE software and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. But it is based on recommendations. It's a little different than we've done it in the past. Will?
No, I think you covered it perfectly, Kevin. We have two unique situations here in that both Vision and Calix are sold and distributed by their manufacturers solely. So we can't get bids from competitive distributors. We have to go right to the maker. We have contracts for both of them. We did a competitive bidding process for both of them in 2022, and we need to now order additional materials outside of those original contracts. So to do that and to maintain in good standing with our procurement processes, we are putting forward these two sole source resolution requests.
So the resolution does a pretty good job of explaining the purpose of this. I guess the question I have is once we, get the purchase meters for the initial install and we've completely replaced all the old meters on our system, we've got some number of, meters in the warehouse to do new jobs and stuff. Are we going to have to keep doing this every couple of years, or the future, anticipated replacement of meters, will that be so low that we don't have to keep doing these resolutions over time?
We would probably, if we continue to use those vendors for our networks, we would continue to come back every 2 years and update the sole source request.
Okay. Well, and it's not a big deal. Dan, do you have a question?
Yeah, on the, excuse me, on the resolutions, like the first one we're looking at presently here, it says declaring vision and it's capitalized. And I realize that, should it say Inc.? Because is that the name of the company or is that the name of the product? I mean, is there needing to be other clarification other than just the vision that we have in that? Just curious.
Vision metering is the formal name. We can update that, or Joel, whatever recommendation you would have.
Just for clarity, or does it matter?
Seems like it ought to have the accurate name. Joel, opinions?
Well, and the reason I'm asking is for another purpose here is that if we could bring this back on consent, if you and I pass it today, Jeff, or would it be better to just use this as a first touch and bring it back? Or is there a timeline issue here? Or
You guys need it today?
We're hoping to have it today. We're waiting to put in the final order to complete the meter installment project. So
Okay.
if we could have it approved.
You could adopt it with, as we've done before.
Right. So what is the accurate name of the company?
Correct.
Metering.
Okay, so I move that we adopt the resolution subject to the change of changing where it says vision to vision metering throughout the document. But I move that we approve the resolution, which is a resolution declaring vision metering a sole source, waiving competitive bidding requirement for the purchase of advanced metering infrastructure equipment from Vision Metering. And also please make the all caps or no all caps consistent through the document. And thank you for catching that, Dan. So that is my motion.
And I'll second it unless there was an amendment in there that I need to second an amendment as well.
No, you just second the motion and it captures the amendment. Are we good, Joel?
You are good. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion.
Actually, I do have one more question before we take the vote, Jeff. And just to make sure that it gets asked, I mean, this doesn't complicate our grant execution at all, does it, by doing this? Just one quick question.
Which grant are you talking about?
Or sorry, our loans. The vision was the loan, correct?
Yeah, that is a loan, but no, it does not do anything.
They probably didn't even reference.
Yeah, we didn't say who we were buying them from or anything. So.
Okay, just making sure that we are not interfering with something we had contractually already set up.
So we have a motion for a modified resolution and a second. All in favor of approving the resolution as modified, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The resolution as modified is approved.
We have two of them. There's one for Calix equipment as well. It's the same story.
So, all right. So basically, same issue. Calix is another meter. No, go ahead. Tell us what it is.
Calix is our fiber electronic vendor.
Okay. And is Calix their full name?
Let me look real quick. I believe it is, but. It is.
Okay. So I guess the only change I would have is, again, they're not an acronym. It looks like an acronym in the title, and then it's, make the spelling consistent or the format consistent.
And then Jeff, then the same question, make sure there isn't any grant issues with our grants by by doing this.
And Mike is saying no. So again, we don't identify the vendor in the grants. Okay. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve a resolution declaring Calix, and that again is the full name. Okay, declaring Calix a sole source, waiving the competitive bidding requirement for the purchase of telecommunications equipment and software from Calix, subject to modifying the resolution so that the formatting is consistent on how Calix is spelled with capital C and lowercase throughout the rest. That's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for modified resolution. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is approved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And next, back to my agenda. So we have interlocal agreement with Energy Northwest. Who's leading us on this one?
I'll take this one. We use Energy Northwest for quite a few services. And it's been a very good partnership for the PUD. Our first interlocal was done in 2014. We continue to use them today. That's why we're asking for this new interlocal. The one we're using now is 10 years old. Some of the things we have used Energy Northwest for our first spill containment for oil was done by Energy Northwest. They updated it a couple of years ago. We've used them for a lot of security, cybersecurity, physical security, that kind of stuff. We've had them look at grants for us on different items and just quite a variety of things that through these interlocals, we feel it's a very successful partnership for the PUD. We hope it's a successful partnership for Energy Northwest, but we feel this is really a necessity for where we are right now.
Okay. And the question I had, was this something that Energy Northwest has sent out basically the same interlocal to all the PUDs, or is it really tailored to us because of the kinds of services we're using them and we might use them in the future?
Great question, Jeff. I don't know. I know the first one was boilerplate. I don't know about this one. This pretty much is from them. So I can find out if I'm sure it's fairly close to the others, but I will ask.
Okay. And did you guys want this approved tonight, or was this a first touch?
We're good with the first touch. They're doing work for us today, but we still have the existing interlocal in place.
Okay. And I read through it. It just seemed to cover, a pretty broad array of services that we could use Energy Northwest for if we so choose. And then by having this in place, it authorizes staff to negotiate, rates and actually just use those services as needed, is how I read it. Okay. Dan, did you have a question?
No, I looked at it. It was in line with what we have in place now, and I know we utilize multiple services from Energy Northwest, so I'm ready to move it tonight unless we want a full board. It doesn't matter to me either way.
I'm okay the same way. We could also just put it on consent. So if, Ken would have a chance to look at it, and if he had any issues, he could pull it off. Kevin, would you be okay with putting it on consent for the next meeting?
But it's fine.
But we still need to make a motion and pass it, correct, to put it on consent, right?
Yeah, well, I
No, we
moved.
don't?
No, not tonight.
Okay.
Staff will put it on there, and then at the next meeting, should one of you decide that there's a question or a change, which would allow Commissioner Collins to raise any questions, he could pull it off, and then you'd have to separately adopt it.
No,
Right.
perfect. I'm fine with going on consent.
Yeah, so that's what we've done in the past. Just give the verbal and it's on there. Okay, sounds good. All right, next. Next item is void warrant resolution.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and jump on this one. So we have 2 outstanding warrants that are still with the county treasurer's office from 2023. So we're just now, per RCW, asking the board as the governing body to pass a resolution authorizing that we void the 2 payments that are outstanding. They're both a year old. They haven't cleared yet. The warrants are only good for a year. So
And these are literally checks that the PUD wrote that
the check that we
whoever,
wrote, and for whatever reason, they never got cashed
okay,
by who they were written to.
okay.
And these will take care of the last 2 checks outstanding with the treasurer's office.
Man, one of those is sizable. That's odd.
Yeah, he didn't cash the last 2 checks for it.
Do we reach out to people like that?
We have tried multiple times because once we void these, they go to the turned into the state for unclaimed property, and we have to do due diligence. And we've tried multiple ways. It's regards the one that you're talking about is in regards to our Calipoint water system payment, and we've tried multiple ways, multiple people to try to get a hold of the person and never got a response.
Wow. Okay.
And we a few months ago we voided the check from 2022, and now we're asking to void the check from 2023. So
Okay. All right. Well, so that is, you need
So
a,
want me to go ahead and make the motion?
yeah. So is there an attached?
I'll
Yeah.
make a motion to approve resolution authorizing the voidance of outstanding warrants from 2023 in accordance with RCW 36.22.100.
Okay. I'll second the motion. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the resolution to cancel the outstanding warrants, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So just a question, Mike. So you void a check like that, and then you report it to the state as unclaimed property, a canceled check, or how do you?
So we void the check on in-house, and then we send the money to the state. So it doesn't come back to us. It goes to the state as unclaimed property, and then the state will use their resources to try to get the money to the individual.
Really? Wow. Never knew that. Okay, well, if we have no further business, we have reached the end of our agenda, and it is now 5:27. Have a good time in Wenatchee, Dan, and we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.